The morning sun blazed mercilessly over Panamint, California, as Sophia Garrison stood in her ivory wedding dress, watching her entire world crumble before 300 witnesses. She could feel every stitch of the too-tight corset digging into her flesh, every seam straining against her generous curves, and she knew without looking that the guests packed into the makeshift outdoor chapel were staring not at a blushing bride, but at what she had always feared she was: too much woman for any man to truly want. Daniel Whitmore stood at the altar, his face the color of sun-bleached bone, his mouth opening and closing like a landed trout as he backed away from her one step at a time. "I cannot do this," Daniel finally said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd with devastating clarity. "I thought I could, Sophia. I truly believed I could overlook your appearance, your size, but standing here now, about to pledge my life to you, I find I cannot live a lie. You deserve honesty if nothing else." The collective gasp from the crowd felt like a physical blow. Sophia stood frozen, her bouquet of wildflowers trembling in her hands. Her mother, seated in the front row, buried her face in her handkerchief. Her father looked as though he wanted to charge the altar and throttle the groom where he stood. The Reverend, an elderly man with kind eyes, reached out as if to steady her, but Sophia stepped back, shaking her head. "You are calling off our wedding because I am fat," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the inferno of humiliation burning through her chest. "You are ending this in front of everyone because you find me too unappealing to marry." "I am being honest," Daniel said, straightening his shoulders as though honesty somehow absolved him of cruelty. "Is that not what marriage should be built upon? I would be doing us both a disservice to proceed when I cannot give you the love you deserve." The worst part was that some small, broken piece of Sophia almost agreed with him. She had spent 23 years in a world that made it abundantly clear that women who looked like her, women who carried extra weight on their frames, who had round faces and thick arms and bellies that curved outward instead of lying flat, were somehow less deserving of love, of happiness, of basic human dignity. She had been 12 years old the first time a boy told her she would be pretty if she lost weight. She had been 16 the first time her own grandmother suggested she try a vinegar diet. At 20, she had nearly starved herself into illness trying to become small enough to be loved, and it was only her mother's intervention that had saved her. Then Daniel had come along. Daniel, with his pleasant face and respectable banking position, who had courted her properly, who had spoken of admiration for her kindness and her skill with numbers, who managed her father's ranch accounts. Daniel, who had proposed on a spring evening and made her believe that perhaps she could be loved as she was. Daniel, who was now walking away from her at their own wedding while 300 people watched. "Then go," Sophia heard herself say. "If you cannot love me, then go. But know this, Daniel Whitmore, the failure here is not mine. I offered you my whole heart, my complete loyalty, my genuine affection. You are the one found wanting, not I." She turned to face the crowd, to walk back down that endless aisle alone when a figure stepped forward from the back of the assembled guests. He was tall, lean in the way of men who worked hard for their living, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of prairie earth. He wore clean but worn clothing, a simple white shirt and dark trousers, boots that had seen countless miles. Sophia recognized him vaguely as one of her father's ranch hands, a cowboy who had been hired on about 6 months prior, though she had rarely spoken to him directly. "I will marry you," the cowboy said, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. "If you will have me, Miss Garrison, I will stand beside you right now and make those vows." The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs. Daniel, halfway down the side aisle in his retreat, stopped and turned back, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. The Reverend looked utterly bewildered. Sophia's father half rose from his seat, his expression caught between outrage and something that might have been hope. Sophia stared at the cowboy. His name came to her suddenly: Rhett Sullivan. She had seen him working with the horses, had watched from the ranch house windows as he broke a particularly stubborn stallion with patience rather than force. She had heard the other hands speak of him with respect, knew he kept to himself mostly, worked hard, never drank to excess or caused trouble. But she had never exchanged more than passing pleasantries with the man, and now he was offering to marry her. "You do not know me," Sophia said, finding her voice. "You do not know anything about me." Rhett took several steps closer, moving into the aisle between the rough-hewn wooden benches. His eyes, she noticed, were a striking green, the color of new leaves in spring. "I know you work on your father's ledgers every evening until your lamp burns low. I know you speak gently to the horses and they trust you. I know you bring water to the hands working in the far fields even when it is not your responsibility. I know Daniel Whitmore is a fool of the highest order, and I know that no woman deserves to be humiliated the way you have been today. And you think marrying me out of pity is somehow better?" Sophia asked, pain sharpening her words into weapons. "I do not offer out of pity," Rhett said, stopping about 10 feet from her. "I offer because I have admired you from a distance for months, and I have wished for the courage to speak to you properly. I am not a wealthy man. I own little more than my horse, my saddle, and the clothes on my back. But I am honest. I work hard, and I give you my word that I would never humiliate you as this man has done. If you will have me, I will spend my life proving that I made this choice with full knowledge and willing heart." Sophia looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw no disgust in his expression, no reluctance, no hidden mockery. She saw nervousness, yes, and uncertainty, but also a steady determination that struck something deep in her chest. Behind her, she could hear Daniel sputtering objections, could hear her parents arguing in fierce whispers, could feel the weight of 300 gazes boring into her back. "Why?" she asked, needing to understand. "Why would you do this?" Rhett's expression softened. "Because beauty is not found only in the package society deems acceptable, Miss Garrison. Because I have seen more of your character in 6 months of distant observation than Daniel Whitmore apparently learned in 2 years of courtship. Because you deserve better than this day has given you, and if I can provide even a small measure of dignity in this moment, then I am honored to do so. And because I am hoping that, perhaps, given time, you might come to care for a simple cowboy who thinks you are already more than worthy of love and respect." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sophia felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone who had come to witness her humiliation. She thought of the alternative, walking away from this altar alone, unwed, the subject of gossip and pity for years to come. She thought of returning to her father's house as a rejected woman, of enduring the sympathetic looks and the whispered conversations. She thought of the very real possibility that no other man would ever offer for her after this public rejection. But more than any of that, she thought about the steady sincerity in Rhett Sullivan's green eyes, the respectful distance he maintained even now, the fact that he had put himself forward to face public scrutiny and possible ridicule just to spare her further shame. "You understand what you are offering?" Sophia asked. "You would be tied to me to this for the rest of your life." "I understand the vows I am willing to make," Rhett said. "Do you understand that I do not make them lightly?" Sophia turned to look at the Reverend, who still stood at the altar looking utterly lost. Reverend Howard, would such a thing even be legal? The ceremony was prepared for another man. Reverend Howard cleared his throat, gathering himself. The license would need to be amended with the correct groom's name. But yes, if both parties are willing and of sound mind, and if there are no legal impediments, I could perform the ceremony today. He paused, then added more gently, Miss Garrison, you are under no obligation to proceed. You may take time to consider to recover from this shock. Time will not change what happened here today, Sophia said. She looked back at Rhett Sullivan. If we do this, I want honesty between us. Can you promise me that? I can and I do, Rhett said. Then ask me properly, Sophia said, lifting her chin. I will not be married out of pity or convenience alone. If we do this, we do it right. Rhett nodded slowly, then closed the distance between them until he stood just before her. He took her free hand, the one not clutching the bouquet, and held it gently. His palm was calloused from years of hard work, warm and steady against her trembling fingers. Sophia Garrison, he said, his voice clear and certain. I know this is not the day you imagined, and I am not the man you chose, but I am asking you to choose me now. I am asking you to take a chance on a cowboy who does not have much to offer except his word, his work, and his willingness to stand beside you. I am asking you to marry me, here and now, before all these witnesses, and to give us the chance to build something real together. Will you have me? Sophia felt the tears finally escape, trailing hot down her cheeks, but they were not tears of humiliation now, not entirely. They were something more complicated, a mixture of pain and relief and terrifying hope. You are certain, I am certain, Rhett said. Then yes, Sophia whispered. Then louder, turning to face the crowd. Yes, I will marry Rhett Sullivan today. The crowd erupted into chaos. Daniel shouted something about the absurdity of the situation and stormed out of the chapel grounds entirely. Sophia's father stood, his face purple with confusion and anger, clearly torn between supporting his daughter and questioning the wisdom of this impulsive decision. Her mother simply wept, though whether from relief or despair, Sophia could not tell. But Reverend Howard, bless him, simply nodded and pulled out the marriage license. Mr. Sullivan, if you would join me here, we will make the necessary corrections. Does anyone present know of any legal impediment to this union? The silence that followed was heavy with shock, but no one spoke up. Rhett released Sophia's hand and moved to the altar to work with the reverend on the paperwork. Sophia stood alone for a moment before her mother rushed forward, enveloping her in a crushing embrace that smelled of lavender and tears. Are you certain? Her mother whispered frantically. Sophia, darling, you do not have to do this. We can go home, we can weather this scandal, you do not have to marry a stranger out of desperation. He is not a complete stranger, Mama, Sophia said quietly. And I am certain, as certain as I can be about anything right now. Her father approached more slowly, his expression unreadable. Sullivan is a good worker, he said gruffly. Honest, reliable, but Sophia, he has nothing. No land, no prospects beyond what I pay him monthly. You would be starting with less than nothing. I would be starting with dignity, Papa, Sophia said. And right now, that means more to me than land or prospects. Her father's face crumpled slightly, and he pulled her into a rare embrace. I am sorry, he said roughly. I am so sorry that Daniel did this to you. If Sullivan treats you poorly, if this is a mistake, you come home. You understand. You always have a home with us. I understand, Sophia said, though she knew the truth. If this marriage failed, she would be a twice rejected woman, and sympathy would turn to judgment. There would be whispers that she was cursed, that something about her drove men away. This had to work, not just because she wanted it to, but because she could not survive another public failure. Rhett returned to her side, the corrected license in hand. It is done, he said quietly. If you are ready, we can proceed." Sophia nodded and turned back to face the altar. Reverend Howard looked out at the crowd, which had settled into a buzzing, whispering mass of humanity, all craning to see what would happen next. "Let us proceed," he said, his voice taking on the formal cadence of the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sophia Garrison and Rhett Sullivan in holy matrimony." The words washed over Sophia like a dream. She heard herself making responses, heard Rhett's steady voice beside her. She felt him take her hand again when the Reverend instructed them to join hands. She looked into his face during the vows and saw no hesitation there, only a calm certainty that was more reassuring than any passionate declaration could have been in that moment. "Do you, Rhett Sullivan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Rhett said clearly. "And do you, Sophia Garrison, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Sophia took a breath, then said firmly, "I do." "Does anyone have a ring?" Reverend Howard asked, looking slightly uncertain. Rhett reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "My mother's," he explained quietly to Sophia. "It is all I have of value. She passed when I was young, and I have carried it with me always." Fresh tears stung Sophia's eyes as Rhett slipped the worn gold band onto her finger. It fit imperfectly, a little loose, but the weight of it felt real and grounding. Reverend Howard smiled gently at them both. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Sullivan, you may kiss your bride." Rhett hesitated, his eyes searching Sophia's face for permission. She nodded slightly, and he leaned forward, pressing a chaste, gentle kiss to her lips. It lasted only a moment, but it was kind, and in that moment, Sophia felt the first fragile stirring of something that might, eventually, become hope. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some applauded, caught up in the unexpected drama and romance of the moment. Others sat in shocked silence or whispered behind their hands. Sophia's parents looked stunned, standing together at the front as though unsure whether to celebrate or mourn. But Sophia found she did not care as much as she thought she would. She was married. She was not the rejected, humiliated spinster she might have been. She was Sophia Sullivan now, and whatever challenges lay ahead, at least she would face them with her dignity intact. The reception that followed was surreal. The food had been prepared, the long tables set up outside the chapel under the blazing California sun. Some guests left immediately, scandalized or uncomfortable with the strange turn of events. Others stayed, perhaps out of genuine goodwill, perhaps out of morbid curiosity. Sophia moved through the crowd on Rhett's arm, accepting congratulations that felt hollow and sympathetic looks that felt worse. Finally, she pulled Rhett aside, into the shade of a scraggly cottonwood tree. "I do not think I can bear much more of this," she admitted. "Everyone is looking at us like we are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, and I am not certain I can face another pitying smile." "Then we leave," Rhett said simply. "This is our wedding day, such as it is. We do not owe these people our suffering for their entertainment." "Where would we go?" Sophia asked. "I assume you do not have a home of your own prepared." "I have a room in the bunkhouse at your father's ranch," Rhett said. "But that is no place for a married couple. I have some money saved." "Not much, but enough for a few nights at the boarding house in town while we figure out what comes next." "We need to speak with my father," Sophia said. "About your employment, about where we will live. Everything has changed." "Everything has changed," Rhett agreed, then added more softly, "But we will work through it together." That is what the vows meant, Sophia. Whatever comes, we face it together. They found Sophia's father near the food tables, accepting condolences from departing guests with a strained expression. When he saw Sophia and Rhett approaching, he excused himself and joined them under the cottonwood tree. "I suppose we need to talk," he said without preamble. "Yes, sir," Rhett said. "I understand that this situation is unusual to say the least. I want you to know that I take my responsibilities seriously. I will care for your daughter to the best of my ability." Sophia's father, Edgar Garrison, studied Rhett with hard eyes. "You have worked for me for 6 months, Sullivan. You are a good hand, I will not deny that. But you just married my only daughter, a woman you barely know, and now I need to understand what your intentions are. Did you do this for a chance at my ranch? For financial security?" "No, sir," Rhett said firmly. "I did this because your daughter deserved better than public humiliation, and because I believe she is a remarkable woman who has been judged unfairly by a society that values the wrong things. I do not expect anything from you. I will continue to work as I have been, and I will save money until Sophia and I can afford our own home. Living in the bunkhouse is not acceptable for a married couple," Edgar said, "and I will not have my daughter living in some shabby boarding house room indefinitely." He paused, his jaw working as he thought. "There is the foreman's cottage. It has been empty since William retired last year. It is small, only 3 rooms, but it is private and sound. You can live there, rent-free, as long as you continue to work for me. Your wages will remain the same for now, but I expect you to prove yourself worthy of my daughter. If you do right by her, we can discuss increasing your responsibilities and your pay." Sophia felt something loosen in her chest. The foreman's cottage was small, yes, but it was clean and separate from the main ranch house, a real home. "Papa, that is generous." "It is practical," Edgar said gruffly. "You are still my daughter, Sophia, and you are carrying the Garrison name even if you have taken Sullivan's. I will not see you living in squalor." He looked back at Rhett. "But understand this, young man. You have taken on a responsibility today. You hurt her, you abandon her, you treat her with anything less than the respect she deserves, and I will make you regret the day you were born. Am I clear?" "Perfectly clear, sir," Rhett said, meeting Edgar's gaze without flinching. "And I accept those terms. I will not give you cause to regret this." Edgar nodded once, then pulled Sophia into another embrace. "I am still trying to understand all this," he said quietly. "But I want you to be happy, girl. I want you to have a good life." "I know, Papa," Sophia said. "I know." They left the reception shortly after, despite Sophia's mother's protests that they had not cut the cake or done any of the traditional celebrations. Sophia was grateful when Rhett simply took her hand and led her to the wagon her father provided to transport them back to the ranch. The ride was quiet, the afternoon sun turning the dry landscape golden and harsh. Sophia sat beside Rhett on the wagon seat, acutely aware of his presence, of the reality of what they had done beginning to sink in. "Are you frightened?" Rhett asked after a long stretch of silence. Sophia considered the question. "Yes," she admitted. "I do not know you, you do not know me. We have tied ourselves together for life and we are strangers." "Then let us stop being strangers," Rhett said. "Ask me anything you want to know." "Where are you from?" Sophia asked. "How did you end up working for my father?" "I am from Nebraska originally," Rhett said, his eyes on the road ahead as he guided the horses. "My father had a small farm, but he lost it when I was 12. He died shortly after, and my mother and I drifted for a few years. She took in laundry, did sewing, whatever work she could find. I worked odd jobs, stables mostly, anything with horses. She passed when I was 15, pneumonia. After that, I worked my way west, ranch to ranch, learning cattle work, breaking horses, doing whatever was needed. I am sorry about your parents, Sophia said quietly. It was a long time ago, Rhett said. I learned to take care of myself, to work hard, to not expect more than I earned. I ended up in California last year, heard your father was hiring, and I have been on the Garrison ranch ever since. He paused. Now you, tell me something I do not know. Sophia was quiet for a moment, thinking. I wanted to be a teacher, she said finally. When I was young, I loved books, loved learning. I wanted to run a school to teach children. But my father needed help with the ranch accounts, and there was not much call for teachers out here anyway. So I stayed home, worked on the ledgers, helped my mother with the house. And then I got older, and people started looking at me differently, or rather, they stopped looking at me at all. I became the Garrison girl who would probably never marry, the plain one who was good with numbers. You are not plain, Rhett said firmly. Sophia laughed, but there was no humor in it. You do not need to say things like that. We are married now. You do not need to court me with false flattery. It is not false, Rhett said, pulling the wagon to a stop. They had reached a small overlook, a place where the road curved and the valley spread out below them. He turned to face her fully. Sophia, I need you to understand something. I do not know what lies or cruelties you have been told about your appearance, but I am not Daniel Whitmore. I am not a man who needs to make a woman small to feel big. When I look at you, I see a woman with intelligent eyes and a kind smile. I see strength and capability. I see someone who deserves to be valued for all that she is. You see an overweight woman who was rejected at the altar, Sophia said, the words bitter and hard. You can be kind, Rhett, but do not pretend I am something I am not. Rhett was quiet for a long moment. Then he said carefully, You are a woman who has been taught that your worth is determined by your size. You are a woman who has been hurt by a society that has cruel and narrow standards of beauty. But that does not make those standards correct, Sophia. It makes them cruel, and I will not participate in that cruelty, not even to make you more comfortable by confirming what you expect to hear. Sophia felt tears threaten again, and she angrily wiped at her eyes. Why are you doing this? Truly, you could have any woman. You are handsome, you are kind, you are honest. Why would you tie yourself to someone like me? Because attraction is not only physical, Rhett said. Because I have watched you for months and I have seen your character, and that matters more to me than any arbitrary standard of beauty. Because when I saw you standing there today, humiliated by a man too shallow to see what he was throwing away, something in me broke. And because I have been alone for a very long time, and the idea of being alone with you seems infinitely better than being alone without you. The honesty in his words, the raw vulnerability, cracked something open in Sophia's chest. She looked at this man, this relative stranger who had just upended his entire life to save her from public humiliation, and she felt the first real stirring of something beyond gratitude. It was not love, not yet, but it was the possibility of love, and that was more than she had thought she would ever feel again. I will try, she said finally. I will try to believe you, to trust this. But Rhett, I need you to be patient with me. I have spent my entire life being told I am not enough, that I am too much, that I am wrong somehow. I cannot undo that in a day. I know, Rhett said gently, and I will be patient. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out together. He set the wagon moving again, and they continued the rest of the journey in silence. But it was a more comfortable silence now, one that felt less like the awkwardness of strangers and more like the quiet understanding of two people beginning to navigate a shared path. The foreman's cottage sat about a quarter-mile from the main ranch house, a small structure of weathered wood with a covered porch and a stone chimney. Someone, probably Sophia's mother, had already been there. The door stood open, and when they entered, Sophia could see that the place had been aired out, swept clean. There were fresh linens on the bed in the small bedroom, supplies in the kitchen area, even a few wildflowers in a jar on the rough-hewn table. "It is not much," Rhett said, looking around the three-room cottage, "but it is more than I have had in a long time." "It is perfect," Sophia said, and meant it. After the chaos and humiliation of the day, the small cottage felt like a sanctuary. "I should change out of this dress," she added, suddenly aware that she was still wearing her wedding gown, the one she had planned to wear for Daniel, the one that was now tied to the worst day of her life. "Of course," Rhett said. "I will step outside, give you privacy." After he left, Sophia struggled out of the elaborate dress, unlacing the corset with shaking fingers until she could finally breathe properly. She found her trunk had been delivered, her mother's doing again, and she pulled out a simple day dress, something practical and comfortable. As she dressed, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror on the wall and paused. The woman looking back at her was flushed, her hair coming loose from its careful arrangement, her eyes red from crying. She was round-faced and full-figured, curves and soft flesh, where fashion demanded angles and delicacy. For so long, she had looked at her reflection with disappointment, wishing she could carve away the parts that made her unacceptable. But standing there in the cottage, married to a man who claimed to see value in her despite those very things, Sophia tried, for the first time in a long time, to look at herself with something other than judgment. She was healthy. She was strong. She could work all day on ranch accounts without flagging. She could ride a horse, manage a household, cook a decent meal. She was intelligent, educated, capable. Why did none of that matter as much as the size of her waist? Rhett knocked gently on the door. "Is it all right to come in?" "Yes," Sophia called, turning away from the mirror. He entered, and she saw that he had removed his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves. "I started a fire in the stove," he said. "Thought we might want coffee or tea if you prefer. I do not know what food has been left for us, but we should have something. Neither of us ate at the reception." The mention of food made Sophia's stomach clench with anxiety. Eating in front of Rhett, being watched and possibly judged for what she ate or how much, was a prospect that filled her with dread. But they had to eat, and she needed to begin as she meant to go on, not hiding or apologizing for basic human needs. "I will see what there is," she said, moving to the kitchen area. The cupboards yielded bread, cheese, some dried meat, preserves. Simple fare, but enough for a meal. She began setting things out on the table, aware of Rhett moving around the cottage behind her, the strange domesticity of the moment. They sat across from each other at the small table, and for a few minutes they ate in silence. Then Rhett said, "We should talk about expectations. About how this marriage will work." Sophia set down the piece of bread she had been holding, her appetite vanishing. "What do you mean?" "I mean that this was not a typical courtship or wedding," Rhett said. "We need to establish some ground rules, some understanding between us. I do not want you to be uncomfortable or afraid in your own home." "I appreciate that," Sophia said carefully. "What kind of ground rules did you have in mind?" "First, I want to be clear about the sleeping arrangements," Rhett said, and Sophia felt her face flush hot. "I know that in a normal marriage, a husband and wife would share a bed, would be intimate, but this is not a normal situation. I am not expecting you to fulfill those duties immediately or at all until you are ready. I can sleep out here on the floor by the fireplace. You take the bedroom." Sophia had been braced for something else entirely, and his words caught her off guard. "You would do that, even though we are married?" "Sophia, you married me under duress in the worst moment of your life to escape humiliation," Rhett said gently. "I may be your husband legally, but I do not feel I have earned the right to expect intimacy from you. That is something that should be built over time, with trust and genuine affection. I will not force you or pressure you. When and if you decide you want that kind of marriage, you can let me know. Until then, I am content to be your friend, your partner, your protector, whatever you need me to be. The relief that flooded through Sophia was so intense it was almost painful. She had been terrified of this conversation, of the wedding night, of the expectations she assumed Rhett would have. The fact that he was offering her time, space, autonomy over her own body was more than she had dared hope for. "Thank you," she whispered. "I was so frightened of tonight I thought you would." "Force you," Rhett said bluntly. "Sophia, I would never do that, never. You have my word on that. Your body is your own always. I will not touch you without your clear consent." Sophia felt tears slip down her cheeks again, and she wiped at them impatiently. "I do not understand you," she said. "You gave up your freedom today, tied yourself to a woman you barely know, a woman most men would not want, and you are asking for nothing in return. Why?" Rhett was quiet for a long time, then he said, "When I was 16, I worked for a rancher in Kansas. He was a hard man, cruel sometimes, but I needed the work. He had a wife, a woman named Charlotte. She was beautiful in the conventional sense, the kind of woman men write poetry about, but she was miserable, and he made her that way. He married her for her looks, for the status of having a beautiful wife, and when the novelty wore off, he treated her like property. He was unfaithful, he was mean, he made her feel small and worthless. One night, I found her crying in the barn, and she told me she wished she had married someone who valued her for more than her face, that beauty had been a curse, not a blessing, because it attracted the wrong kind of attention." He paused, looking down at his hands. "She died that winter. Some said it was an accident, that she slipped on the ice and hit her head. But I always wondered if she just gave up, if the misery became too much. And I swore to myself that if I ever had the chance to make a different choice, to value substance over surface, I would do it. Today, when I saw you standing there, abandoned by a man who valued the wrong things, I saw a chance to keep that promise to myself. So no, Sophia, I am not asking for anything in return except the chance to prove that not all men are as shallow as Daniel Whitmore." Sophia sat in stunned silence, absorbing his words. Finally, she said, "I am glad you spoke up today. I am terrified and confused, and I do not know how this will work, but I am glad it is you I am married to and not him." "That is a start," Rhett said with a small smile. "We will figure out the rest as we go." They finished their meal in more comfortable silence, then worked together to clean up, finding a rhythm in the simple domestic task that felt surprisingly natural. As the sun began to set, painting the small cottage in warm orange light, Sophia felt exhaustion settling into her bones. It had been the longest, most emotionally devastating day of her life, and she wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed and let unconsciousness claim her for a while. "I think I need to sleep," she admitted. "Of course," Rhett said. "You take the bedroom, I will be fine out here." Sophia hesitated at the doorway to the small bedroom. "Rhett, thank you. For today, for your kindness, I will not forget it." "Good night, Sophia," Rhett said gently. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment, trying to process everything that had happened. She was married to a cowboy she barely knew, living in a cottage on her father's ranch. This morning, she had woken up expecting to marry Daniel Whitmore, to move into his respectable house in town, to begin a life she had convinced herself would be good enough. Now, everything was different, and she had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But as she climbed into the bed, feeling the softness of the quilts her mother had left, she found that the terror and uncertainty were mingled with something else. Hope. Small and fragile and probably foolish, but there nonetheless. Rhett Sullivan had stepped forward when no one else would. He had offered her dignity and respect and patience. And if that could be the foundation of their marriage, then perhaps, just perhaps, they could build something real. She fell asleep with that thought, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, but no longer drowning in humiliation. And in the other room, Rhett lay by the dying fire, thinking about the remarkable woman sleeping in the next room and hoping he had made a promise he could keep. The next morning, Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was or why the room looked unfamiliar. Then memory crashed back in. The wedding, the rejection, Rhett's intervention. She was married. She was Sophia Sullivan now. She rose and dressed quickly, braiding her hair in a simple plait, then emerged from the bedroom to find Rhett at the stove, cooking breakfast with the easy competence of a man who had been taking care of himself for a long time. "Good morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I hope I did not wake you. I am used to rising early for work." "What time is it?" Sophia asked. "Just past dawn," Rhett said. "I need to report to the stables soon. Your father will expect me to work today, married or not." "Of course," Sophia said, though the thought of being left alone in the cottage, with nothing to do but think about the events of yesterday, was not appealing. "I should probably go to the main house, speak with my mother, help with the household work." "Or you could rest," Rhett suggested, plating the bacon and eggs. "Yesterday was difficult. You are allowed to take time to recover." They ate breakfast together, and Sophia found herself watching Rhett when she thought he was not looking. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly. He was handsome, she supposed, though not in the polished way Daniel had been. Rhett's handsomeness was rougher, harder earned, the look of a man who worked in the sun and wind. His hands were scarred from rope and reins, his face weathered, his body lean and strong. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of someone who never wasted energy. "What are you thinking?" Rhett asked, catching her staring. Sophia felt her face heat. "I am thinking that I know very little about you. Yesterday you told me about your past, but I do not know simple things. What is your favorite color? What do you do when you are not working? Do you have friends, family I should know about?" Rhett smiled slightly. "My favorite color is probably blue, like the sky on a clear day. When I am not working, I read when I can get books. I play a bit of harmonica, though not very well. I like being outdoors. As for family, there is no one. My parents are gone. I had no siblings, no aunts or uncles that I know of. Friends are few. The other hands at the ranch are friendly enough, but I keep to myself mostly." He paused. "Now you." "My favorite color is green," Sophia said. "Like new grass in spring. I love books, especially novels, though my father thinks they are frivolous. I used to draw when I was younger, though I have not in years. And my family, well, you know them now. My parents, some cousins back east that I have never met, not much more than that." "We are both rather alone in the world then," Rhett observed. "I suppose we are," Sophia agreed. "But I suppose that means we have each other now." "I suppose it does," Rhett said, and there was warmth in his voice that made something flutter in Sophia's chest. After breakfast, Rhett prepared to leave for work. He hesitated at the door, looking back at Sophia. "Will you be all right today?" "I will be back in the evening, but if you need anything, send word to the stables and I will come." "I will be fine," Sophia assured him, though she was not entirely certain that was true. "I will probably go see my mother, sort out what needs to be done here." Rhett nodded, then surprised her by crossing back to where she stood and taking her hand briefly. "We are in this together, Sophia. Remember that. You are not alone." Then he was gone, and Sophia was left standing in the small cottage, her hand still tingling from his touch. She looked around at the 3 rooms that were now her home, at the life that had been thrust upon her in the course of a single chaotic day, and she made a decision. She could spend her time dwelling on what she had lost, on the humiliation and pain of yesterday, or she could move forward. She could make this marriage work, could build something with Rhett, could carve out a life that was different from the one she had imagined but potentially just as good, if not better. She spent the morning making the cottage more of a home. She unpacked her trunk, putting her few belongings away, hanging her dresses in the small wardrobe. She found cleaning supplies and scrubbed the already clean floors, needing the physical work to occupy her mind. She inventoried the kitchen supplies and made a mental list of what they would need. When she finally paused for a break, she realized several hours had passed, and she felt more settled, more grounded than she had since Daniel had rejected her. In the afternoon, she walked to the main ranch house to see her mother. Abigail Garrison was in the kitchen, directing the cook and the household staff, and when she saw Sophia, she immediately pulled her into the parlor for privacy. "How are you?" her mother asked, gripping Sophia's hands tightly. "Tell me honestly, darling, are you all right?" "Is Sullivan treating you well?" "I am surviving," Sophia said. "And yes, Rhett is treating me with nothing but kindness and respect." "Your father said he offered you the foreman's cottage," Abigail said. "Have you everything you need there?" "I tried to stock it with essentials, but if there is anything lacking, you must tell me." "You did more than enough, Mama," Sophia said. "The cottage is perfect for us." "Perfect," Abigail repeated, shaking her head. "Sophia, none of this is perfect. You should be in a fine house in town, married to a man of means and position. Instead, you are in a ranch cottage married to a cowboy with nothing to his name. How is any of this perfect?" "Mama, Daniel rejected me in front of 300 people," Sophia said quietly. "Rhett Sullivan saved me from complete humiliation. He is treating me with more genuine respect and consideration than Daniel ever did, wealth and position aside. So yes, it is not perfect, but it is far better than the alternative." Abigail's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted so much more for you. I wanted you to be happy, to be secure, to not have to struggle." "I know," Sophia said, embracing her mother, "but this is my life now, and I am choosing to make the best of it. I need you to support me in that, not to mourn what I lost." "I will try," Abigail said, wiping at her eyes. "But if he ever mistreats you, if you ever need anything, you come to me immediately. Promise me." "I promise," Sophia said, though she could not imagine needing to make good on that promise. Rhett had given her no cause to fear him, quite the opposite. She spent another hour with her mother, discussing practical matters like household accounts and supplies, things that made her feel useful and competent. When she finally returned to the cottage, she found Rhett already there, washing up at the basin in the kitchen. "You are back early," she said, surprised. "Your father let me leave when the day's work was done," Rhett said, drying his hands. "I think he is still adjusting to the situation, unsure how to treat me now that I am his son-in-law and not just his hired hand." "That must be awkward for you," Sophia said sympathetically. "A bit," Rhett admitted. "But I will manage. How was your day?" "Busy," Sophia said. "I made a list of supplies we need. If you can spare some of your wages, I thought I could go into town tomorrow, purchase what we require for the household." "Of course," Rhett said. "Whatever you need. I will go with you if you like, or if you prefer to go alone or with your mother, that is fine too." Sophia considered. The thought of facing the people of Panamint so soon after yesterday's disaster was daunting, but it had to be done eventually. "I would like it if you came with me," she said. "We should face the gossip together." "Then we will," Rhett agreed. They fell into a routine over the following days that felt surprisingly natural. Rhett worked during the day, and Sophia managed the cottage, cooked their meals, and began helping her father with the ranch accounts again, working from the cottage instead of the main house. In the evenings, they talked, sharing stories about their days, getting to know each other in small increments. Rhett proved to be a good conversationalist when he opened up, with a dry sense of humor that surprised Sophia and made her laugh despite herself. The trip to town was as difficult as Sophia had feared. Eyes followed them everywhere, whispers trailing in their wake. At the general store, several women openly stared, and one older woman actually approached Sophia to ask if she was all right, as though Rhett might be holding her hostage. "I am perfectly fine, Mrs. Henderson," Sophia said firmly. "This is my husband, Rhett Sullivan. We are very happy together." The lie was not entirely a lie. They were not unhappy, at least. And as Rhett stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring, Sophia found that facing the gossip was easier than she had anticipated. Let them talk. Let them speculate and judge. She was married, she had a home, she had dignity. That was more than she had thought she would have after Daniel's rejection. As the weeks passed, Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying Rhett's company. He was kind without being patronizing, helpful without being overbearing. He fixed things around the cottage that needed repair. He brought her wildflowers that he found while out working. He listened when she talked about her day and seemed genuinely interested. And slowly, carefully, the walls Sophia had built around her heart began to crack. One evening, about a month after their wedding, they were sitting outside on the cottage porch, watching the sun set over the valley. It was a warm night, and the air smelled of sagebrush and dust. Sophia had made a berry pie from wild berries she had picked, and they were sharing it straight from the pan, passing it back and forth with 2 forks. "This is good," Rhett said appreciatively. "You are an excellent cook." "My mother taught me," Sophia said. "She insisted I needed to know how to run a household properly, even if she worried I would never have one of my own." "Her worry was unfounded," Rhett said. "You have a household now and you run it beautifully." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then said, "Rhett, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he said. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Marrying me, tying yourself to someone you do not love, giving up your freedom." Rhett set down his fork and turned to look at her directly. "I do not regret it for a single moment. Yes, our marriage started in an unusual way, but Sophia, this past month has been the happiest I have been in years. I like coming home to you. I like talking with you, eating with you, sharing this life with you. I do not feel tied down. I feel like I finally have something to build toward, a future that matters." "You could have had that with any woman," Sophia said. "Someone beautiful, someone society would celebrate you for marrying." "I do not want any woman," Rhett said with gentle intensity. "I want you. I am attracted to your intelligence, your strength, your kindness. I admire the way you refuse to let Daniel's cruelty break you, the way you have built a life from the ruins of that day. And Sophia, I need you to hear this. I find you beautiful. Not despite your appearance, but because of the whole of who you are. When I look at you, I see someone remarkable, and I feel fortunate that you chose to give me a chance." Sophia felt tears threatening again, but this time they were not tears of pain. "I am starting to believe you," she whispered. "When you say things like that, when you look at me the way you do, I am starting to believe that maybe I am not as unworthy as I was taught to believe." "You were never unworthy," Rhett said. "You were just surrounded by people who could not see your value, but I see it, Sophia. I see you." The space between them felt charged, electric. Sophia realized that at some point, without her quite noticing when, her feelings for Rhett had shifted. He was no longer just the kind stranger who had saved her from humiliation. He was becoming someone essential, someone she looked forward to seeing, someone whose opinion mattered deeply. She was falling in love with him, she realized with a start. Slowly, carefully, but falling nonetheless. "Rhett," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I would like it if you kissed me, if you wanted to, that is." Rhett's eyes widened slightly, surprise and something warmer flickering across his face. "Are you certain?" "I am certain," Sophia said. "I trust you and I want to." He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to change her mind, but she did not move away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet, nothing demanding or aggressive. It was the kiss of someone who valued her, who respected her, who was willing to meet her where she was. Sophia felt warmth bloom in her chest, felt herself lean into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating fast. When they finally pulled apart, Rhett rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "But I did not want to rush you." "I am glad you waited," Sophia said. "I am glad we built this foundation first. I think I needed that." "We can keep taking things as slowly as you need," Rhett said. "There is no rush, we have our whole lives." But over the following weeks, Sophia found that she did not want to go slowly anymore. She wanted to be close to Rhett, wanted to explore the growing feelings between them. They began sharing the bed in the small bedroom, at first just sleeping side by side, then gradually more. Rhett remained patient and gentle, always checking that she was comfortable, always putting her needs first. And when they finally became husband and wife in truth, it was sweet and tender and everything Sophia had hoped intimacy could be but had feared she would never experience. The months turned into a year, then two. Rhett's position at the ranch evolved as he proved his worth not just as a ranch hand but as a manager and leader. Edgar promoted him to assistant foreman, then eventually foreman, with a salary that allowed them to save money and make plans for the future. The cottage remained their home, but they made improvements, added a room, planted a garden that Sophia tended with pride. The gossip about their unusual wedding faded as the people of Panamint found new scandals to occupy their attention. Sophia and Rhett became simply another married couple, working hard, building a life together. Sophia ran into Daniel Whitmore once in town, about 6 months after the wedding, and found that she felt nothing but pity for him. He looked diminished somehow, smaller, and when he tried to speak to her, to perhaps apologize or explain, she simply walked past him with her head high, Rhett's hand firm in hers. 2 years after their wedding, Sophia realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She told Rhett over dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. He was quiet for a long moment, then he got up from the table, came around to her side and pulled her into his arms. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Sophia, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "I am overjoyed," he said. "Terrified but overjoyed. We are going to have a family." The pregnancy was not easy. Sophia dealt with sickness and exhaustion, and as her body changed and grew, old insecurities resurfaced. She felt huge and ungainly, and there were days when she looked in the mirror and hated what she saw. But Rhett was steadfast, telling her every day that she was beautiful, that she was strong, that he was in awe of what her body was doing in creating their child. When her pain started on a cold January morning, Rhett rode for the midwife and for Sophia's mother, then stayed by her side through the long hours of labor, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, encouraging her when she was certain she could not continue. And when their son was finally born, red-faced and squalling, Rhett wept openly, holding the tiny bundle with hands that trembled. "He is perfect," Rhett said, looking down at their son with undisguised adoration. "Sophia, you did this. You are amazing." They named him Thomas after Rhett's father. Tommy grew into a bright, energetic child with his father's green eyes and his mother's quick mind. 2 years later, a daughter followed, whom they named Margaret after Sophia's grandmother. Maggie had her mother's round face and her father's easy smile. Life was not always easy. There were hard years when the ranch struggled, when money was tight and the work was grueling. There were disagreements and frustrations, moments when the stresses of life with small children and demanding work threatened to overwhelm them. But through it all, Rhett and Sophia remained each other's anchor. The foundation they had built in those early days, based on respect and genuine care, held firm even when storms battered against it. Edgar Garrison died when Tommy was 5, and Rhett and Sophia inherited the management of the ranch. It was a massive responsibility, but they faced it together, Sophia handling the business and accounts, Rhett managing the hands and the herds. The ranch thrived under their leadership, and they were able to buy out Sophia's distant cousins and secure full ownership. As the years passed, Sophia found that her relationship with her body evolved. She would never be the slim, delicate woman that society held up as the ideal, but she learned to appreciate what her body could do. It had carried and birthed 2 healthy children. It was strong enough to work long days when needed. It was desired by a man who loved her genuinely and completely. And slowly, painfully, she learned to look at herself with something closer to acceptance, if not always love. One evening, when Tommy was 10 and Maggie was 8, the family sat together on the porch of the cottage watching the sunset. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm summer air. Rhett sat beside Sophia on the old bench he had built years ago, his arm around her shoulders. "You ever think about that day?" Sophia asked quietly. "Our wedding day." "Sometimes," Rhett admitted. "I think about how terrified I was, stepping forward like that. I had no plan, no idea what I was doing. I just knew I could not watch you be humiliated and do nothing." "I am glad you stepped forward," Sophia said, leaning into his side. "I cannot imagine my life without you now. You and the children, this ranch, this life we have built, it is more than I ever dreamed of having." "I love you," Rhett said, turning to kiss her temple. "I think I started falling in love with you that very first day, watching you stand up to Daniel with such dignity and strength. And I have fallen more deeply in love with you every day since." "I love you too," Sophia said, the words coming easily now after years of practice. "You saved me, Rhett, not just from humiliation, but from a life of believing I was not worthy of love. You showed me I was wrong, and I will never be able to thank you enough for that." "You do not need to thank me," Rhett said. "Loving you, being loved by you, raising our children together, that is all the thanks I will ever need." Tommy came running up to the porch then, breathless and excited. "Pa, can we take the horses out tomorrow? I want to show Maggie the overlook where you and Ma stopped on your wedding day." Rhett glanced at Sophia, who nodded with a smile. "Sure, son, we can do that." As their children ran back to their play, Sophia thought about that long-ago day, about standing at the altar in humiliation, about Rhett stepping forward to change the course of her entire life. She thought about all the years since, the challenges and joys, the growth and learning, the love that had deepened and matured into something unshakable. She had been rejected at the altar by a man who could not see past her appearance. But a cowboy had stepped forward and said he would marry her, and in doing so had given her everything she had ever truly needed: respect, partnership, love, and a life filled with purpose and meaning. It had not been the fairy tale she had imagined as a girl, but it was real and hard-won and infinitely more valuable because of it. The years continued to roll forward, bringing both blessings and challenges as years always do. When Tommy turned 16, he began taking on more responsibilities at the ranch, showing a natural talent for working with the cattle that reminded Sophia so much of his father. It made her heart ache. Maggie, at 14, showed more interest in the business side of things, often sitting with Sophia in the ranch office, learning how to manage accounts and negotiate prices with buyers. But it was during these years that new tests came. A drought struck California, lasting 3 brutal years. Water became scarce, pastures dried up, and hard decisions had to be made about which cattle to keep and which to sell off. Money grew tight again, tighter than it had been in years, and there were nights when Sophia and Rhett sat up late, going over the accounts again and again, trying to find a way to keep the ranch solvent without letting go of the hands who depended on them for work. "We could sell off the north section," Rhett suggested one night, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The Hendersons have been wanting to expand their holdings. It would give us enough to get through this year and into the next." "That land has been in my family for 30 years, Sophia said, though she knew he was right to suggest it. "My father bought it when I was a child." "I know," Rhett said gently, "but land means nothing if we cannot hold onto the rest of the ranch. Your father would have understood. He was a practical man." Sophia knew he was right, and in the end they sold the north section for a fair price. It hurt to let it go, but it allowed them to keep the core of the ranch intact and all their hands employed through the worst of the drought. When the rains finally returned in the 4th year, they were still standing, battered but unbroken. It was during this difficult period that something shifted in Tommy. He had always been a good-natured boy, easy-going and cheerful, but as he approached manhood, he became more serious, more driven. One evening, when he was 17, he came to Sophia and Rhett with a request. "I want to learn more than just ranching," he said. "I want to get an education, learn about business and law. I want to be able to help protect this ranch, to make sure we never come that close to losing everything again." Sophia and Rhett exchanged glances. Education beyond basic schooling was expensive and would mean sending Tommy away, at least for a time. But they both recognized the determination in their son's eyes, the ambition that was not selfish but rooted in love for his family and their legacy. "We will find a way," Rhett said finally. "If that is what you truly want, son, we will make it happen." It took another year of saving and planning, but they eventually sent Tommy to a business college in Sacramento. Maggie, inspired by her brother, declared her intention to become a teacher, to open a school in Panamint for the children of ranch families who often went without formal education. Sophia thought of her own long-ago dreams of teaching and felt a fierce pride in her daughter's ambition. The house felt empty with both children pursuing their futures, but Sophia and Rhett rediscovered each other in the quiet. They were in their early 40s now, weathered by years of hard work and the California sun, but the love between them had only deepened. They took long rides together across the ranch, reminiscing about the years behind them and dreaming about the years ahead. They made love with the comfortable intimacy of long-married partners who knew each other's bodies and hearts completely. One evening, as they sat together in the parlor of the main ranch house, which they had finally moved into after Abigail passed peacefully in her sleep several years prior, Sophia found a photograph from their wedding day. Someone had captured the moment just after the ceremony. Rhett and Sophia standing together, both looking slightly shell-shocked but determined. Sophia barely recognized herself in the image, seeing not the woman she had been taught to despise, but a young woman who had survived a terrible ordeal with dignity intact. "Look how young we were," she said, showing the photograph to Rhett. He studied it with a soft smile. We had no idea what we were getting into, did we? Not a clue, Sophia agreed. If someone had told me that day that I would end up here, running this ranch with you, raising two remarkable children, building this life, I would not have believed them. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not stepped forward? Rhett asked. Sometimes, Sophia admitted, but not with regret. Everything that happened led us here, and I would not change that for anything. Tommy returned to the ranch 2 years later with his education completed, and immediately began implementing new business practices that helped increase their profits and stability. He was courting a young woman from Sacramento, the daughter of a banker, a smart and kind woman named Elizabeth who fit into the family as though she had always belonged. They married in a simple ceremony at the ranch, nothing like the elaborate disaster of Sophia's first wedding, and Sophia found herself weeping happy tears throughout, Rhett's hand firm in hers. Maggie fulfilled her dream of opening a school, starting with just 6 students meeting in a converted barn on the ranch property. But word spread about the quality of her teaching, and within 2 years, the community had come together to build a proper schoolhouse in town. She married one of the local ranchers, a widower with 2 young children who needed a mother, and threw herself into her blended family with characteristic enthusiasm. The ranch continued to thrive under the combined management of Rhett, Sophia, and Tommy. They expanded carefully, buying back the north section when it came up for sale again, and acquiring additional grazing rights on government land. They modernized where it made sense, bringing in new breeding stock and implementing better water management systems. The Garrison Sullivan Ranch became known throughout California as one of the most well-run operations in the territory, a legacy built on hard work, smart business, and genuine care for both animals and people. When Sophia turned 50, Rhett organized a surprise celebration, inviting everyone from the ranch hands to the most prominent families in Panamint. Standing in the main hall of the ranch house, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, for both Tommy and Maggie had given them grandchildren by then, 4 in total with more on the way. Sophia felt overwhelmed by gratitude for the unexpected life she had been given. Rhett made a toast that brought tears to many eyes. 27 years ago, I made the best decision of my life. I married a woman I barely knew, a woman who society had judged harshly and unfairly, a woman who had been rejected by a man too blind to see what he was throwing away. I married Sophia Garrison not knowing if she would ever forgive me for my audacity, not knowing if we could build something real from such strange beginnings. But she gave me a chance, and together we built not just a marriage but a partnership, a family, and a legacy. Sophia, you are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable person I have ever known, and every day for the past 27 years, I have woken up grateful that you chose to take a chance on a cowboy with nothing but good intentions. I love you more today than I did on that chaotic wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. Thank you for making my life extraordinary. Sophia could not speak through her tears, but she did not need to. She simply held Rhett close, surrounded by the life they had built together, and felt truly, completely blessed. The years continued their steady march. Rhett's hair turned silver, and his hands became more gnarled with arthritis, but he continued to work alongside the ranch hands, unable to fully retire even as Tommy took over more of the day-to-day operations. Sophia's body continued to change as all bodies do with age, but she had long since made peace with her appearance, her worth no longer tied to something as arbitrary as her size or shape. They became grandparents many times over. Tommy and Elizabeth had 5 children in total, 3 boys and 2 girls, and the main ranch house was always filled with the sound of children's laughter. Maggie and her husband had 4 children between her 2 stepchildren and 2 more of their own, and she juggled motherhood with running the increasingly successful school with the efficiency Sophia had passed down to her. One summer evening, when Sophia was 62 and Rhett 63, they took a ride up to the overlook where Rhett had stopped the wagon on their wedding day so long ago. The valley spread out before them, golden in the late afternoon sun, the ranch buildings visible in the distance. They sat side by side on a blanket, sharing water from a canteen, comfortable in a silence that needed no words. "I never thanked you properly," Sophia said suddenly. "For what?" Rhett asked, genuinely puzzled. "For seeing me," Sophia said. "For stepping forward that day when you had no obligation to do so. For spending the past 39 years showing me that I was worthy of love. For building this life with me. Sophia, you have thanked me every day just by being who you are," Rhett said. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love when I had been alone for so long. If anything, I should be thanking you for taking a chance on a stranger who interrupted your wedding." "We saved each other," Sophia said, taking his weathered hand in hers. "You saved me from humiliation and a life of believing I was unworthy. I saved you from loneliness and a life without love. We saved each other and we built this beautiful life from the ruins of that terrible day." "I would do it all again," Rhett said. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy. I would choose you 1,000 times over." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Below them, smoke rose from the chimneys of the ranch, their family gathering for dinner, waiting for them to return. This was their legacy, Sophia thought. Not just the successful ranch or the thriving business, but the love they had built, the family they had raised, the example they had set of what marriage could be when founded on respect and genuine care, rather than superficial attraction or social expectation. As darkness began to fall and they prepared to ride back down to the ranch, Sophia thought about the girl she had been at 23, standing at the altar in humiliation, convinced her life was over. She thought about how impossible it would have seemed then that she would end up here, blessed with love and family, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. And she thought about the man who had made it all possible, the cowboy who had stepped forward when no one else would, who had offered her dignity when others offered only pity, who had loved her not despite who she was but because of it. "Ready to head back?" Rhett asked, helping her to her feet. "Always, as long as I am going with you," Sophia said, and meant it with her whole heart. They rode back to the ranch together as twilight deepened into night, the lights of home guiding them forward, the love that had sustained them for nearly 4 decades as strong and steady as ever. And Sophia knew, with a certainty that transcended words, that the cowboy who had said, "I will marry you" on the worst day of her life had given her the greatest gift anyone could give, the chance to be truly, completely, and authentically loved. The final years of their lives together were gentle ones. They officially retired from active ranch management when Sophia turned 65, though they remained involved in major decisions and available for counsel. Tommy ran the ranch with skill and wisdom, and his eldest son showed every sign of continuing the legacy into yet another generation. The Garrison Sullivan Ranch was secure, its future bright. Rhett and Sophia spent their days in simpler pursuits. They tended a large garden together, providing vegetables for the entire ranch household. They read extensively, finally having the time to indulge in the novels and histories they loved. They spent long hours with their grandchildren, telling stories of the old days, passing down family history and wisdom. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered again, nearly 70 people in total including children, grandchildren, ranch hands past and present, and friends from across California. The celebration lasted 3 days, filled with food and music and storytelling. On the evening of the anniversary itself, Sophia and Rhett renewed their vows in a private ceremony at sunset, their children and grandchildren surrounding them in a circle of love. This time, when Rhett promised to love and honor Sophia for all his days, when he slipped a new ring onto her finger beside the worn gold band from his mother, there was no uncertainty, no fear. There was only the absolute certainty of 5 decades of proven love, of a partnership that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. And when Sophia made her vows in return, her voice was strong and sure, filled with gratitude for the unexpected gift she had been given so many years ago. Rhett passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, at age 65, his hand clasped in Sophia's. His heart, the doctor said, simply gave out, worn down by decades of hard work and hard living before he had found his home at the Garrison Ranch. Sophia grieved deeply, as did their entire family and the community that had come to respect and love him. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch he had helped build, with a simple marker that read, Rhett Sullivan, beloved husband, father, grandfather, a good man who loved well. Sophia lived another 8 years without him, surrounded by family, still sharp-minded and involved in ranch decisions until near the end. She spent her final years writing down the story of their life together, wanting future generations to know the truth of how their family began. She wanted them to understand that love can come from the most unexpected places, that true worth is found in character rather than appearance, that the courage to step forward in someone else's darkest moment can change the course of lives in ways impossible to predict. When Sophia died at age 75, her children found her journal, the complete story of the obese girl who was rejected at the altar and the cowboy who stepped forward and said, "I will marry you." They found the truth of how a single moment of courage had led to 52 years of genuine love, to a thriving ranch and family, to a legacy that would continue for generations. They buried her beside Rhett on the hillside, together in death as they had been in life, and they made sure the story was preserved and passed down so that their descendants would always know where they came from and what their family was built on. The ranch continued to prosper under Tommy's management and later his children's. The story of Rhett and Sophia became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of courage, of seeing beyond surface appearances, of the power of choosing love over judgment. And on the hillside where they were buried, their great-great-grandchildren would sometimes sit and look out over the valley, understanding that everything they had, everything their family had become, started with one cowboy who had the courage to step forward and offer dignity to a woman in her darkest hour, and one woman who had the courage to accept his offer and build something beautiful from the ruins of her dreams.